Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I'm Cassidy. If you're new here, welcome. It's really nice to meet you. And if you are returning, welcome back. It's good to see y'all again. So today we will be talking about Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. It is book 2 in the Mortal Instruments series. If you have not watched my video on the first book, Clockwork Angel, I will link it down below. I recommend watching that one first. And as always with these videos, massive spoilers ahead for the entire video. So if you would like to read this book without any spoilers at all, please click off the video and then click back on once you have read it, and then let me know what you thought. There is also another trilogy with this entire world that I have made videos on, or you guys could also read the books as well. That is the Mortal Instruments series, Clockwork Bones, Ashes, and Glass. There are 3 more books after that one. But if you look online with the order to read these books, it is read that trilogy first and then read this trilogy. You can watch these videos without having read or that trilogy or see my videos on it, but I will be talking about like some family names that are the same, characters that might show up in both trilogies. So not a bad idea to watch those videos or at least read those books. But again, not necessary at all if you do not wish to. Anyone is interested, this is the bookmark I was using while reading. It is Luffy from One Piece. And as always, if you see me look down or off to the side, I'm simply referring back to my notes so I don't forget anything I would like to tell you guys. Alright, let's get into it. Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. On the back at the very top it says, "Secrets and lies can corrupt even the purest heart." In the magical underworld of Victorian London, Tessa Gray has found safety with the Shadowhunters. But when Charlotte's position as head of the London Institute is threatened, Tessa could become easy prey for the mysterious Magister, who will stop at nothing to use Tessa's powers for his own dark ends. With the help of handsome, tortured Will and the devoted Jem, Tessa discovers that the Magister's war on the Shadowhunters is deeply personal. To unravel the secrets of the past, the trio journeys from mist-shrouded Yorkshire to a manor house that holds untold horrors. When they encounter a clockwork demon bearing a warning for Will, they realize that the Magister knows their every move and that one of their own has betrayed them. Tessa is drawn more and more to Jem, though her longing for Will continues to unsettle her. But something is changing in Will. The wall he has built around himself is crumbling. Could finding the Magister free Will from his secrets and give Tessa answers about who she really is? My first impressions and questions just from reading the back of the book is Magnus helping Will at the very end of book 1. Will went to Magnus asking for help, so is Magnus doing that for Will? Is that why his walls are crumbling, because he's getting help? Also, the biggest one, obviously, is who betrayed them? I have theories. One is Jessamine, just because she has never wanted to be a Shadowhunter. She doesn't even really like anyone in the Institute. Is it Henry? That is Charlotte's husband. He's always been more of an aloof character. Doesn't seem to really love Charlotte. Charlotte doesn't touch him because she wants to be considerate of his feelings. But Charlotte's so in love with him, so I hope it's not Henry, but could it be? Is it one of the Lightwoods? In book 1, we met a bunch of the Lightwoods, and they're not very nice people. So could they somehow be betraying Charlotte and the Clave? Also, before I get started with the summary of the book and my thoughts throughout while reading, it is important to note that I have read this book before. It has been a minute, and I did not remember a lot of the twists and turns in this book. Same with the first one. I was definitely surprised while reading it. I remembered some things very clearly, but not a ton. So anything that I do remember from my first time reading it, I will try to keep inside of me so it doesn't get spoiled for anyone. Alright, we start off this book with the prologue. That is Will going to a cemetery where he can hear all the ghosts that have been buried there. He goes to one specific ghost. Her name is Molly, and she is like a dealer. Magnus wanted something, so he sent Will to go to Molly. And something Magnus didn't ask for, but Will still wants, is something like an indifference potion, a tolerance potion, not love potion, and not like the opposite, not a hate potion. Just something in the middle. Molly assumes that it's for someone else. Will wants it for himself. And Molly says that there's no such thing, or at least that she doesn't have anything like that. So Will goes off on his way. Now we're into the actual story, and that starts with Jem taking Tessa on just like a really mini tour around like one part of London, and they're just really sweet together. Like, well, Will and Tessa had passion and fire in the first book, like a blazing fire. Jem is more just like a constantly burning flame. Like, he'll keep you warm and you like cuddly and snuggles and stuff. And they're really sweet. Will ends up interrupting them, and even though Tessa knows that she shouldn't be thinking of Will, because at the end of the last book, Will was just an ass to her and said horrible things, Tessa can't help but think of the boy. There's a council meeting going on. A lot of the clave is there, both 18 and older, the adults and under. So Will, Tessa, Jem, they're all there. Charlotte's authority and leadership of the London Institute gets called into question, just with everything that was handled with Mortmain and Nate, Tessa's brother, how they took Nate in, but then he betrayed them to Mortmain. 2 of their servants passed away, unfortunately. Oh, that was tragic. Benedict Lightwood, he is the father of the 2 Lightwood boys, Gabriel and Gideon. He calls Charlotte's leadership into question, and he wants the London Institute for himself. And he has backers as well. So the consul basically makes a deal. Charlotte needs to find Mortmain in 2 weeks. And they've been looking for him for months, and they haven't found anything. The entire clave. And now it is just on Charlotte and her institute to find Mortmain in 2 weeks. And if she doesn't, then basically leadership will be handed over to Benedict. Overall, Benedict is just being an ass. We don't like him. Will is also on like a hair trigger right now, and he looks like he's ready to like kill everybody. No one's gonna stay alive after Will's done with them. Benedict also offers his 2 sons, Gideon and Gabriel, Gideon older son, Gabriel the younger one, to the London Institute to help train, because when they were attacked, Sophie, Tessa, they're not trained. Jessamine isn't trained. And so he offers his 2 boys to help train these girls. Charlotte has to basically take them in. She can't tell the consul no. So the boys will be staying at the London Institute. Well, not staying. They come over like every day basically, or I don't know how often, but they come over in a carriage and train them, and then they leave once they're done. After the meeting, Charlotte basically goes up to the consul and is like, why did you do that? You never would have treated me that way if I were a man. It's just because I was a girl. And consul, who is, I don't remember his first name, I think it's like Josiah, but his family name is Wayland, and the only Wayland we know is, we don't really know a Wayland. We thought Jace in the original trilogy was a Wayland for the most of the first book. He ended up not being one. We never actually met a Wayland, so we don't know anything about them, like just by family name, but I think it's interesting that it's the same family name. And during this time, we also find out that Charlotte's maiden name, before she got married to Henry Branwell, is Fairchild. And that is Clary's mom, Jocelyn. Her maiden name is Fairchild. So that is also super interesting. And I think Charlotte is described to be a redhead, or maybe that's Henry. But it's very cool. Charlotte also is definitely described to be very short, and Clary is very short. So, yay, I think it's cute. I think it's fun that we get to see all these like family names that we know of in the original trilogy. And I wonder if like in all the other series, if we're going to find more family names that we recognize. So because of the time limit, everyone is searching for clues on Mortmain with 0 luck, like nothing. So Jem has an idea that maybe Mortmain's hatred of the Shadowhunters wasn't always so intense. Maybe there's some reason that he does hate the Shadowhunters, something that they did against him. And the Shadowhunters have a thing called reparations, where a downworlder can basically go to them and be like, hey, you guys handled this really improperly. We demand reparations. And when Brother Enoch comes to talk to Charlotte, Jem goes to find information on reparations and see if there's anything that he can see. Will visits Magnus, who summons a demon. It ends up being the incorrect demon, unfortunately. Will just wants his curse lifted, so we find out there's a curse on him, but we don't know what that curse is. He refuses to tell Magnus, so we don't know yet. But he wants the curse lifted, and all he can think about is Tessa. Back at the Institute, we see Sophie and her jealousy over Tessa and basically how Jem treats Tessa and how he looks at her. He looks at her with such admiration and like longing and love. And Sophie has fondness for Jem, and so she's a little jealous, but she knows that her and Jem can never be. And then Jessamine leaves her room. Jessamine is horrible to Sophie, so Sophie hides, and Jessamine doesn't leave her room in like her normal pretty ball gown. She leaves in men's clothing. So instantly I'm like, oh my god, Jessamine's the spy. But this is literally in like the first 3-ish chapters, maybe 4, maybe 2. So I'm like, it's so early for us to know who the like spy is, so maybe it's a red herring. But Jessamine doesn't wear men's clothes, so is she the spy? Is she not? Still unsure. Tessa and Sophie begin their training from Gabriel and Gideon Lightwood. Gideon is paired up with Sophie. Gabriel is paired up with Tessa. Jessamine claims to have a headache, so she does not partake. And even though Gabriel and Will are always at odds, they don't have a good relationship, they're not friends, they're more like mortal enemies, Gabriel proves himself to actually be a really good teacher. He's really patient, he's really kind, and Tessa's actually learning a lot from him. They then also meet their new servants to replace the 2 that they lost. They lost Agatha the cook and Thomas the carriage driver, caretaker. And so their new servants are Bridget as the new cook and Cyril. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm probably butchering his name. But he is Thomas's brother. And so Cyril is really hard for Sophie just to look at because he looks so much like Thomas. And Thomas was a part of their family. The Shadowhunters then find out that Mortmain was raised by warlocks. Warlocks, by nature, just can't have children. They are infertile. So they must have adopted a human child, Mortmain. The Shadowhunters unalived both parents, and he demanded reparations for them. His hatred for Shadowhunters is extremely personal. He filed the reparations, it's not a lawsuit, but I'm gonna say it's a lawsuit just for easy terms. He filed the reparations lawsuit with the York Institute. It's kind of a smaller one, not quite as grand as the London one, but that was probably the institute that ran the raid on his parents. And the Starkweathers run that institute. We know the name Starkweather because the old tutor in the original trilogy, Hodge, he was a Starkweather. Anyway, they run that institute, so Charlotte plans to write a letter to see if she can talk to the head of the institute. Later on, Tessa and Will talk for really the first time. They're alone and they actually talk. Tessa's still so mad at him, rightfully so. He said horrible things to her. And it's very obvious, even to Tessa, that she has a hold over him. And her words can really hurt Will. She says something mean to him, which, again, is so valid. But she says something mean to him, and he is so hurt by what she says. He doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to believe that he is that bad of a person. Starkweather refuses to see Charlotte. There was some bad blood between him and Charlotte's father, so she decides to send Will, Jem, and Tessa in her place. They have to get to the York Institute by train. And while on the train, they have to come up with a story for Tessa. She's not marked, so she can't be a shadow hunter. And they can't claim that she is what she is, a downworlder, because he's so old, Starkweather, and he is still so, you'll find out, he's such a bigot. So they decide to tell Starkweather that she is, I forget the term they used. She's going through the ascent, I think it's what it's called. She is engaged to Jem and is training to be a shadow hunter herself. Regular mundanes can be shadow hunters, but only if they go through a bunch of training and they're deemed worthy. They have to drink from the mortal cup. It is how you create new shadow hunters. Normally this happens when you're a kid and you get trained that way. But you can become like this, I think, only if you get engaged to a shadow hunter. I'm a little unsure about that. But that is the only way that a mundane and a shadow hunter can be together, is either the mundane becomes a shadow hunter or the shadow hunter leaves the clave for good. While on the train, Tessa also learns more about Parabatai. You have to choose one before you are 18 years old. You can only have one in your entire life. So if one person in the pair is unalived, if they get turned into a downworlder, or they become a regular mundane, you are no longer Parabatai. Also, runes put on by your Parabatai are way stronger than runes put on by anybody else. And there are certain runes that you can use only like when you are a Parabatai. They make it to the Institute, and Starkweather actually accepts them in. He allows them to stay, which is a shock to all the servants. It was pretty obvious he was just going to turn them away, but he allows them to come in only after seeing Tessa. He finds all the files for Mortmain and states that Mortmain asked for reparations for his mom specifically. His dad was playing with necromancy, trying to bring dead bodies back to life and see if he could put different souls inside, and I think he was even building like machines as well, like basically the automations. And he calls Mortmain the Clockwork Prince, but he asks for reparations for his mom because his mom didn't know anything about his dad's necromancy, didn't know anything about what he was doing. Starkweather says that's ridiculous. The wife always knows. We also find out that Mortmain had a manor in York, and it's called like Rasker Manor. And so they plan to go visit that manor. Beforehand, though, it's still dinner time. Starkweather takes them to see all the spoils. Spoils are newly illegal, like you can't take any. That's because of the Accords. But Starkweather still has some from before they were illegal. And you find out that he's a bigot. He thinks all downworlders are evil and they should all die. And he is such an ass. And the spoils are gruesome. There are teeth, there's bullets, there's heads even. Tessa ends up passing out. She can hear Jem be like, my wife's not used to so much blood yet. And or my fiance. While she's unconscious, she dreams that she's being taken apart. Henry's also in the dream, which I just find interesting. She awakes with a start, and Will is actually there by her side. They nearly kiss, but Tessa stops him because she asks him if he can say that everything he said, all the bad things, horrible things that he told her, were a lie. And he says he can't tell her that. So they don't kiss. Next day, they ride to Rasker Manor, and before they even can get close to the manor and really get inside, Will sees somebody that he knows. So it ends up actually being Cecily, who is Will's little sister. She's like 14, 15. When Will sees her, he assumes his parents are in there as well, and he just sprints towards the manor. Jem sprints right after him and tackles him to the ground and points out that there's an automation that's been following them. And if Will goes into the manor and talks to his family, despite that being against clave law, it could also bring danger to his family. The automation could hurt his family or even worse. And so Will then sprints after the automation. Jem and Tessa follow. Tessa ends up being attacked by the automation because of course she is, and her angel saves her life again. Will ends up off in the automation, but before it is fully non-functional and dead, it has a message which is basically stop looking into Mortmain's past, or if they don't, Will's family will perish. They ride back to the Institute, first to the train and then the Institute. Mostly in silence, they ask about the fact that that's Will's sister, but Will claimed his sister is dead, and he says that she is dead. Once they are back, Tessa tries to give Jem his ring back, his family ring, because he had given it to her to make the engagement seem more real, and Jem tells Tessa to keep it, that it looks good on her. Will also sprints off, runs away, they don't even try to follow him because they know he just needs to work through his own shit. He goes to Magnus and he finally tells the story of the curse. He opened a Pyxis, the box that holds demons, energies, souls, when he was a kid, and a demon got out. He didn't know what it was. His big sister Ella came in with a seraph blade and protected Will. The demon, before he left, basically said, "All who love you will die." And the next morning, his sister did. So he left his family immediately. He didn't want the rest of them to be hurt, to die because of their love for him. So he left, and he has been pushing people away ever since. His only sin, as he calls it, is Jem, because Jem is already dying, but he's miserable and he's exhausted. Being an ass to everyone isn't who he is. Not really. And he's keeping everyone so far away because he doesn't want them to die. Magnus wants to help him, but is also scared of the danger towards Will. Back at the Institute, Charlotte's worried about the fact that they found the Hirondales, and she reveals that despite it being against Clave law, she asked Ragnar Fell, a warlock, to look after the Hirondales, just check in on them, because Will was so desperate when he came to the Institute and was like, "You'll tell me if they die, right?" He didn't want to know, like, anything else, just if they die. And so she couldn't tell little 12-year-old Will, who was bawling, no. So she asked Ragnar Fell to keep an eye out on them. She also plans to ask him again just to look into them, make sure they're all safe because of everything with Mortmain, and try to see if Ragnar Fell can figure out why they're even there at Mortmain's manor. She also asks Tessa to change into Starkweather. Tessa stole a button from him, I think, and just to make sure that they weren't missing anything, that he told them everything. When she changes into Starkweather, she realizes that he's going senile. His mind, his memories, his voice is broken and weird and just, odd. But when she looked into his mind and saw how he reacted to seeing her, it was definitely like a kind of thing, and she doesn't know how to explain it. She can't look into his memories and see why he had that reaction to her. So she doesn't mention that, but it's definitely weird. Will is still missing the next day. Tessa and Jem are really worried. Jessamine's not because she's awful. Charlotte's also really worried. At training, Gabriel is in an extra testy mood. Tessa calls him out on it, says, "You're actually like a really good trainer, you're really patient. What is wrong with you?" And he just kind of stalks out. Gideon apologizes for both of them, Gideon apologizes for his little brother. Tessa also notes, while Gabriel's being all testy and annoying, that Gideon seems to be staring at Sophie and more than just this is the person I'm training. And she feels very protective of Sophie because the scar on her face came from an old employer. He tried to rope Sophie, and when she resisted, he slashed her face. And so Sophie's so sweet. So Tessa's really protective of Sophie. Ragnar Fell comes, and Charlotte asks if he'll help, and he offers. He says yes, that he'll look into it. For a fee, obviously, but he'll do it. Magnus ends up sending a letter to Tessa telling her that Will is not okay, that there's some, that this isn't one of his usual, disappearances, so they need to look after him. So she shows the note to Jem, and they decide to go look for him. And they find him in Ifrit den. It's basically just a den for downworlders to go and get high. And he is, off the same stuff that is killing Jem. Jem is unwillingly addicted to this drug called Yin-Fen. And that is what Will decided to get high with. During this whole time, Tessa is thinking about both boys, Jem and Will, constantly. Jem being so sweet and so caring, so patient. Will just being kind of annoying, but she can't get him out of her mind. When they find Will, Jem is furious, so mad. And he punches Will. Like, Jem is not an angry person. He has, like, infinite amount of patience, but not this time. That night, Tessa overhears Jem just basically abusing his violin. And when she goes in, it's like, Jem, stop. Like, his violin is so important to him. He's breaking the string. Like, he says it doesn't matter, that he's going to die soon anyway. And she's like, no, it does matter. And they, like, kind of argue. Jem is so mad that Will decided to play with the thing that is killing him. Like, he is so unbelievably angry still that his own Parabatai, his blood brother basically, his chosen brother, decided to do that. Tessa ends up calming him. They end up passionately making out. Like, oh my god. Maybe I would have done more, but Jem's drug fell off, like, the dresser that he keeps it on, and his drug just spills. And he's like, please, Tessa, leave. Like, you need to leave. I don't want you to see me on the ground trying to scrape up this drug that I need to live. So they leave. Before Tessa goes into her room, she also sees Jessamine sneak out in boys' clothes. So now I'm even more convinced that Jessamine is the spy. Still not fully, but more convinced. And when she goes to bed, she falls asleep dreaming and thinking of not only Jem, but Will too. The next morning, Jem sits literally as far away from Tessa as he possibly can and does not look at her. Will states what he overheard while in the den, and that is that the werewolves are now all also addicted to Yin Fen. Mortmain is giving it to them because it lets them work day and night. And so they are working for Mortmain, building automations, but Yin Fen is being it's harder and harder to find because so many werewolves are needing it. At training this day, Will decides to join in. He gets on Gabriel's nerves, and Gabriel loses it and tells them why Benedict hates Charlotte so much. And that is because Charlotte's dad ratted out their uncle for breaking a minor clave law, and he unalived himself because of that. And then the mom was so stricken with grief that she died too. The Lightwood's mom. Then he leaves. Gideon tells the real story, which wasn't a minor clave law. Their uncle, Silas, he fell in love with his Parabatai. Charlotte's dad ratted him out to the clave that he was in love with his Parabatai, and they were going to be separated. I think what happens when you fall in love with your Parabatai is that the rune that is on you guys forever, that states that your Parabatai is, like, removed forcefully, like, probably burned off, and you can no longer live together. Which is so sad. But he unalived himself, whether that was the shame or whatever, and the moms died. So Gideon is far more calm about it and was like, yeah, that wasn't, like, it wasn't a minor clave law that he broke. Like, I don't blame Charlotte. Definitely not for the father's mistakes. And Gabriel's just an ass. Tessa and Will end up talking about the night before, and Will is shocked to find out that it was Jem who punched him. He didn't remember much of the night, but was shocked to find out that Jem, of all people, was the one who punched him. And heartbroken and, again, shocked to find that Jem thought he was just making fun of him, basically, like, playing with the thing that's killing him, like, for fun. And he's like, that's not why I did it. No, I didn't even cross my mind. Like, he pales at hearing what Jem thought. The last thing he wanted Jem to think was that he was making a mockery of his addiction, that he cannot help. Sophie is still training with Gideon because Tessa had lost her trainer, so that was when her and Will went to talk. So Sophie's still training, and Gideon tells her that she's really talented at the Shadowhunter training and that he would like to see her again, like, outside of the Institute. And Sophie deserves all of the love. Oh my god, I'm so excited. And Gideon seems far more calm than Gabriel, so I like that it's Gideon that like Sophie. The werewolf pack leader, Scott Woolsey, he comes, says he'll put feelers out for the werewolves that are addicted to Yin-Fen and working for Mortmain. They aren't his werewolves, they're young werewolves that just don't belong to a pack. But he'll put feelers out. We also learned that the old pack leader was actually his brother, and normally you become the pack leader by killing the current one, but he became pack leader basically by vote after his brother died by a vampire named De Quincy. His brother was dating Camille. So the anger that Camille felt over her werewolf lover dying, that was over Scott's brother. Ragnar Fell writes to Charlotte and says that the Herondales are fine. Cecily is a spitfire and amazing. She also blames Will for her dad's addiction to gambling. It didn't happen because Ella died. It happened when Will left for the Institute and refused to talk to them. So Cecily blames Will for their family basically falling apart, but she still wants him back. Charlotte decides not to tell Will any of this because that's the last thing he needs. Jem tells Charlotte what Gabriel had told Tessa because they had mentioned to Jem what was said, and he wants Charlotte to know just so that she can be prepared, and she says, "That's not true. My dad never ratted out Silas. He unalived himself because he couldn't bear the thought of not being with his Parabatai, but that wasn't my dad's fault." Will goes to Jem and he apologizes for how it came across. He brings more of the Yin-Fen for him, but he is desperate for Jem to forgive him. Jem is the one person who, no matter what, has always loved Will, and he needs him. Like, Jem is his life. Jem is his lifeline, and he can't lose him, and he is desperate for forgiveness. He basically says, like, I never meant for it to seem like I was making a mockery out of your addiction. That is the last thing I would ever want to do. I just wanted to forget everything for a minute. I wanted to forget about my family, basically. And Jem is like, I forgave you after that night. You're totally fine. He's back to being very patient and kind, Jem. Will is still just so thankful, but so desperate to be forgiven. Sophie ends up coming to Tessa, and she's like, hey girl, I need your help. She had found a note for Jessamine that was like, come to Benedict Manor, or come to Lightwood Manor. Benedict's throwing a party, and it's like a downworlder part, like a bunch of downworlders gonna be there, and the handwriting isn't Nate's handwriting, like Tessa's brother Nate. And when Jessamine saw Sophie with it, she's like, the training just kicked in. She knocked Jessamine out and went to Tessa. I was like, help, I don't know what to do. I'll be fired. And she's like, calm down. And so Tessa grabs Will. They decide to tie her up. Will puts basically a sleeping rune on Jessamine, and they decide to go to the party. Tessa's going to be as Jessamine, and it's a masquerade party, so Will can wear a mask and just blend in. But it's revealed that Jessamine is the spy, and she was going to visit Nate. And yeah, Tessa and Will leave. Tessa is appearing as Jessamine, but for some reason she can't read Jessamine's mind or memories. Normally whenever she changes into someone, their voice comes out, but Tessa can't find Jessamine's voice. It's not coming to her, so she's worried about that. She also asks Will basically about his sisters, and he just reveals one. I had two. One was older, one was younger. The older one died, the younger one didn't. And also why Gabriel hates Will so much and what happened with Gabriel's sister. And basically when they were 13, his sister, or Gabriel's sister Tatiana, was in love with Will. And Will found her diary that was basically a love poem, love notes to Will, and decided to read it in front of everybody at a party and humiliated Tatiana. He's like, it was the only way she would stop and get away. And yeah, it was basically just little kids humiliating each other, but far more innocent than what Tessa had assumed, I think she thought it had happened more recently and something scandalous, but no. Pretty innocent children bullying each other. But Gabriel had come up to try to defend his sister, and Will broke his arm, despite Gabriel having more training. So that's also why Gabriel hates him, not just for his sister, but because Will's better than him. So Tessa and Will join the party at Benedict's manor, and all of the Lightwoods are there. Benedict is there flirting with demons. Gideon is there just kind of leaning against the wall, and Gabriel is just kind of like mingling, but not flirting, he's kind of like just being a good host. Tessa, as Jessamine, dances with Nate, and she learns that they actually got married. And so Jessamine Lovelace is actually Jessamine Gray. Jesus. And she also learns that Nate was set to have Jessamine frame Tessa for possession of stolen magic artifacts or something like that. She had snuck the Book of the White into Tessa's room, like under a floorboard, while Tessa wasn't in there. And then when the Clave searched her room, they were going to like hold her prisoner. And Benedict was going to get her out and hand her over to Mortmain. So Benedict is a puppet for Mortmain. Tessa basically just learns that Jessamine has been sharing secrets and telling Nate everything that happened in the Institute, because she believes that Nate loves her. Tessa, being Nate's little sister, can see right through him and knows that he doesn't love her. Will is able to get Nate away from Tessa for a minute. They talk, and Will is like, your disguise is falling. She's like, what? And she's like, this hasn't happened. So they run outside. They end up, so she drops the disguise completely, and they end up making out, which this girl has made out with 2 different boys in like less than a week, which so fair. Get it, girl. And these boys are described to be so hot. But they like make out. It's super sexual. Like, whew. And then Magnus comes outside. It's like, hey. And they're like, Tessa is mortified. He reveals that the drinks that they had actually had warlock powder in it that lowers inhibitions. So you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And Will's face just kind of falls. Tessa is mortified. Will then spots the demon that he's been looking for, the demon that cursed him. And he sprints after this demon, like, so fast. And Magnus is like, let's get you out of here, girl, to Tessa. Once home in the Institute, Tessa and Sophie go to Charlotte, tell her everything. And so she comes with the mortal sword and Brother Enoch to question Jessamine. I feel like Sophie and Brother Enoch are like friends, because it's always him who comes. But basically how the mortal sword works is you lay it on a shadow hunter's hands. Their hands are basically just like this. You lay it on their hands, and they are forced to tell the truth. Like, it's ripped out of them even if they don't want it to. So they question her, and she is fully convinced that Nate loves her. Nate lied to her. Tessa's like, he doesn't love you. I know my brother. He does not love you. And she's like, no, he does. You're lying. So fully convinced that he loves her. And Jessamine also reveals that Tessa is actually the child of both a demon and a shadow hunter. However, that should not be possible. When a demon and a shadow hunter get together and get pregnant, the child is always stillborn. So that shouldn't be possible. Like, there has never once been a case of a demon and a shadow hunter successfully procreating. And then it's also mentioned to Jessamine that, okay, so you're claiming that Tessa's human parent is a shadow hunter, but Tessa and Nate are brothers. Shadow hunter blood is always stronger than any other blood. So that means you married a shadow hunter, and she's kind of dumb. She's like, oh, Jessamine hates shadow hunters and wanted to just marry a normal mundane. And nope, not a thing. Apparently. It's also revealed that there is a block on her mind. Mortmain somehow put a block there, and she claims that Mortmain is an Idris, but that's impossible. And she's like, no, that's not right, but he is, but that's not true. And it's like, the mortal sword should reveal the truth, and it's not. So there's a block on her mind. So Brother Enoch takes her to the Silent City so that they can actually probe her mind and figure out what's going on. Jessamine's like, Charlotte, please, I can't go there. Like, have mercy. Charlotte's cold and she's mean, and I love it because Jessamine so deserves that. One, she's been kind of just a raging bitch this entire book and a half. But now she's actually facing the consequences. Thank goodness. Will then goes to Magnus, and he has a demon tooth like stuck in him, and he's like, you can summon this demon now. Here you go. He's like, okay, yes, but not tonight. Go home. Will then passes out because the tooth is poisonous. So yay. Magnus is still in Camille's home, and Camille finally comes home, and he's been waiting for her all this time. Still fully in love, but she comes home and she's like, oh, why is there a shadow hunter here? There's no like, I missed you. And he's like, where were you? She was in another country, I think. And she had human lovers during this time that she ended up unaliving and drinking all their blood. And she's like, what does it matter? Like, she's so nonchalant about it. And Magnus just wants someone to love him and wants someone to want to be with him. And Camille obviously doesn't. And she thinks Magnus will be with her no matter what. That Magnus is just so head over heels in love with Camille that he will never leave her. That he can't live without her. Magnus is like, no, I can. So he breaks up with Camille and claims to be with Will. Because Will is just so pretty. And everyone finds Will extremely pretty. He's like, yeah, I'm with Will now. Will sort of wakes up from his slumber. He's like napping on the couch. He sort of wakes up. Magnus kisses him and then they leave. And outside, Will's like, did you kiss me in there? And Magnus is like, nope. And he's like, cool. I love it. It's so cute and so funny. And I just adore Magnus. And he genuinely, well, he doesn't love Will, like not in a romantic sense. He cares about this boy so much. The next morning, everyone talks of Jessamine. Henry cannot believe that their Jessie could dare betray them. Charlotte's getting really annoyed with this boy. They decide to have Tessa change into Jessamine once again to go meet Nate and gather more information before they go to the Clave with anything. But first, they have to go and see Jessamine in the Silent City and figure out what pet names they use, basically just more information about them. Tessa's like, she's not going to tell me anything. And so Jem is decided to go because Jem always has a very calming presence, and he is probably the one person in the Institute that Jessamine will actually, like, maybe tell something to. And Tessa's still set to go because she is Nate's sister, so technically Jessamine is her sister-in-law, which gross. Sophie leaves the Institute because she is set to meet Gideon that day. She sees him. Gideon is so excited. He has a little picnic basket. It's so cute. And Sophie's like, I cannot meet you anymore. Like, I'm sorry. I wanted to come here and tell you in person, but I can't meet you anymore. And Gideon's like, wait, is this about last night? I'll tell you everything. And so he does, and it's revealed that Benedict Lightwood had raised both his sons, basically like saying one thing during the day in front of the Clave and then doing something completely different at night. And Benedict always said that's how all shadow hunters are. When Gideon went to go study in Madrid, he realized that's not true. And he had to change his ways basically to survive in Madrid and become friends with people. But also he realized that Benedict was not raising them correctly, that he is not a good father. And the only reason he even came back to London was for his brother, to try to save his brother from his father. Basically, the reason he states all this is because he saw Will at the party chasing after a demon, and he wondered if Will would tell everybody. So he tells Sophie everything. I don't fully trust him. I really want to. I like Gideon, and I love him and Sophie. Like, I love that he's so, like, adores Sophie, because she just so deserves that. And I want to really trust him, but it's so hard. Like, it's so hard to trust people in this kind of a book. And Jessamine just betrayed them, so is Gideon another one who will just betray Sophie? And Sophie doesn't deserve that. Tessa and Jem go to visit Jessamine in the Silent City, and on the way there, Jem confesses that he has feelings for Tessa. They hadn't really spoke since they made out. Tessa's like, oh, you must think so poorly of me. That was so improper. And Jem's like, you must think so poorly of me. And basically there was just a misunderstanding for the reason they weren't talking. And they kiss again. But basically Jem this whole time was like, I would want to court you. Like, it's so old-fashioned. It's so cute. This is an old-fashioned book. It's like 1878, I think. Maybe like 1879 at this point. But like, so old-fashioned, but so cute. Because again, and Tessa just believes that this powder that she had consumed at the party made her have feelings, that the feelings weren't real, but really it just lowers your inhibitions so that you would make out with this boy that you really like out in public and have some massive PDA, which she would never do normally. But the feelings are real. But Tessa's like, no, the feelings weren't real, it was just the powder. She's a dummy right now. They visit Jessamine, and Jessamine does reveal facts about Nate. Tessa needs to go visit him in boys' clothes because that's safer for her to travel alone at night when she's in boys' clothes. And basically they're able just to convince Jessamine about this because at first she was like, I won't tell you anything, I won't betray Nate, he does love me. Tessa's finally like, if you are right and he loves you, he will forgive you. He wouldn't want you to be like hurt by the Silent Brothers, and he would want you to reveal all this stuff. He would want you to be safe, and he will forgive you because he loves you. And Jessamine, knowing Jem's feelings for Tessa, was like, would you forgive Tessa? And he's like, I would forgive her anything. And oh my god. So it's decided that Tessa will wear boys' clothes and walk to meet Nate. Cyril will follow behind her just to make sure that she's safe, but she is invisible in boys' clothes. Before they leave, however, an adult shadow hunter has to be in the Institute, so Gideon comes, trains Sophie. Sophie suggested him, and so he's watching the Institute. Right before Tessa is about to leave, she goes back upstairs, and she sees Gideon and Sophie have a moment. Oh my god. Love it. Super cute. All the other shadow hunters get to the warehouse before Tessa so that they can kind of just scope it out, make sure everything's good. Will and Jem find a werewolf who was addicted to Yin-Fen, and he is dying. Like, he has minutes left. Will is kind of being harsh towards him, but Jem is like, be kind. Jem sees himself in this young werewolf boy. Because this werewolf boy is going to die of the same thing that Jem is going to die of. Once Tessa gets to the warehouse, Nate's like, oh, come here, Jessamine, my love, give me a kiss. And she's like, ah, and he says, I was wondering how far you would go to protect your shadow hunter's little sister. And so Nate knew right away, basically, that she was Tessa, not Jessamine. He figured it out at the party after he was sent away because of Will. And so when she asked to meet, he knew that it would be Tessa. Nate reveals that their Aunt Henrietta is actually his mom. She was engaged to a man, got pregnant, but then the man died. So instead of having the shame of being with child and having sex before marriage, her big sister adopted Aunt Henrietta's child, which is Nate. So Nate and Tessa are actually cousins, but he's still like, you're not my family, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, it's so annoying. They struggle. Tessa's trying to enact some of the training that she's been doing and like kick him, and basically they just struggle. They grapple. A huge automation, like 20 plus feet tall, is there. Has Charlotte. Like, Charlotte's unconscious, and he drops Charlotte to the ground. She just, like, kind of crumples. And the automation is about to step on Charlotte when Henry screams. He's like, no, Charlotte! And he attacks the automation. He also, like, gets whacked to the side. Will and Jem attack the automation. All this time, Tessa and Nate are still fighting. Tessa finally is like, wait, I can change. He's stronger than me, but I can change. So she changes into Nate to control the automation. And Will is able to get Henry's device on the automation. He made a device that'll, like, stop the automation in its tracks, stop it from working. It actually makes the automation explode. So Will covers Tessa with his own body, protects her from the explosion. After the explosion, Tessa goes to Nate because Nate is dying. He has a shard through him. He's obviously not a shadow hunter, or at least we don't know what Nate is, but he is dying. And his dying words, he basically tells Tessa that he is going to burn for what he's done. She's like, it's okay, I forgive you. And he's like, you don't know everything I've done. He also tells Tessa to always wear her angel. So he knows that the angel is protecting her from the automations. And despite saying for 2 books that Tessa is not his sister, is not his family, he wants to protect her still. And I don't know, Nate is a very confused boy. But it seems like he does want to protect Tessa by telling her to always wear the Clockwork Angel. But yeah, he tells Tessa, you don't know everything I've done. So I'm really worried about what else he's done. So after the explosion, everyone's back at the Institute getting healed. Tessa's basically in a coma. But she can hear everything that's going on around her. She also dreams of her aunt, Nate's mom, and her aunt basically just saying that she ruined Nate because she spoiled him because she felt so bad and she never told him the truth even though she wanted to, but she was afraid. And yeah, these 2 girls, Tessa and her aunt, definitely ruined Nate because they made every excuse in the book for him, which that's not Tessa's fault. Tessa is like currently 17. She is a child, but that's definitely the aunt's fault. She hears Jem comforting her and holding her hand. She hears and can see basically the shards of metal being removed from Will's back. He's gripping onto Jem's hand super tightly. And they can't put a rune on him until all the shards are out of his back. Otherwise, the healing rune will just heal over the shards, and that's dangerous. She also dreams of Jessamine and her realizing that even the ring Nate had given her was fake and that everything was a lie. Tessa becomes conscious, but she thinks it's another dream, and so she decides to cuddle up next to Will. Will's like, yeah, it's really sweet, but she just thinks it's a dream. Will goes to Magnus, basically the moment he's healed, doesn't take any time to rest, and they summon that demon that put a curse on Will. It's revealed that the demon never actually put a curse on Will. He didn't have the strength to, so he just told lies, and Will, being 12 and not knowing anything about Shadowhunters really, believed it, especially once his sister died. His sister died because this demon struck her, and his, claws or, spikes, whatever was on him, whatever he struck her with, is poisonous, and that is why she died, not because of a curse. Will can't believe it. He's in shock. He pushed everyone he loved aside and made them hate him for years, 5 years. And he's like, I wasted my life. And Magnus is like, you are 17. Your life hasn't even started yet. Magnus cares for Will so much, and you can see it just all the more. And again, it's not like a romantic love. It's he's like, Will is Magnus's friend, and Magnus adores his friends. Tessa ends up talking to Sophie about Gideon and warns her basically Benedict was awful, how good could Gideon be? And she's like, the sins of the parent are not the sins of the child. You don't carry your family's awfulness. So she offends Sophie more than Sophie has ever been offended with anybody, I think, outwardly, aside from Will. Charlotte is writing a resignation letter. Their 2 weeks are up, and she's like, I have not handled this institute correctly. Henry comes what are you doing resigning? She's like, I need to. And he's like, no. They're also able to clear up misunderstandings. Both Henry and Charlotte adore one another. Henry thinks Charlotte only married him because she needed a man to marry to be head of the institute. And Charlotte thinks that Henry only married her because her father paid off his family. And each one thinks that they put something else above their spouse. Charlotte believes that Henry put in his inventions above her. She would second if anything. And Henry thinks that Charlotte put the Institute #1 and Henry is second if anything. In reality, each one put each other as the top, as their #1, and everything else was second to that. And they're just able to clear it up, and it's so cute and so sweet. They're adorable. Now that they have recognized one another's feelings, fully adorable, and I love it. Will comes in, he sees the letter Charlotte's writing. He's like, you are not resigning. He wants to find Tessa. He's like very animated. They're like, who is this boy? Jem ends up proposing to Tessa, and she accepts. Like, he's like, I love you. I want to be with you for as long as I have left. Will you marry me? And she's like, yeah, I'll marry you. It's so sweet. I adore Will, though, and oh my god. Like, I love both of these boys, and I love both of them for her, but oh my god. Everyone gathers so they can talk about the future of the Institute, and Benedict, again, their 2 weeks are up and they don't have Mortmain. They don't know where he is. Sophie reveals that she knows what Mortmain has over Benedict. She's been meeting Gideon outside of the Institute. She's so embarrassed telling this. Gideon told her, Benedict has demon pox. Will is ecstatic hearing this, by the way, like dances and sings demon pox and stuff. Demon pox, no one ever believed that demon pox was real. He spent 2 books being like, no, someone had demon pox. So he's so excited hearing someone actually has demon pox. Just basically an illness, it'll kill you. Benedict ended up giving it to his wife, and she unalived herself at the shame of knowing that her husband was stepping out with demons. And nobody knows about that except for them now. And the only reason Benedict is still alive is because Mortmain is giving him medicine so that he can stay alive and not succumb to the illness. So they plan to blackmail him, as one does. So Charlotte, Tessa, and Will all plan to go to the manor and to blackmail him. Will wants to talk to Tessa. She's like, hey, not now. We'll talk later. And then Tessa also apologizes to Sophie for what she said about Gideon. She's like, that was not my place. I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, it's okay. Like, it came from the good place, and I understand. Like, they're really good friends. I know it's like a servant, like, guest relationship. Master, not that Tessa is Sophie's master, but Sophie is a servant. And so they can never truly be, like, friends, but they're such good friends. So they go to the manor, tell Benedict that they know everything, and they blackmail him. They're like, we won't tell anybody if you back Charlotte at the meeting and resign or like give up wanting the Institute. Gideon actually sides with them, and he's like, I told him, Dad, like, it's on me. And he leaves with them while Gabriel stays behind with his dad. And he is like, how dare Gideon betray our family? Ugh. So Will finally is able to talk to Tessa, and he confesses his feelings. He tells her that he is madly in love with her. He tells her everything about the curse, how it actually wasn't real, but he thought it was, and for 5 years he thought it was, and that's why he said such horrible things. But he is so in love with her, and has been since moment 1. And that's when she breaks it to him that she is engaged to Jem. Jem just proposed, and she accepted. And he's like, we could go to Jem and explain. He'll understand. She's like, yeah, he would. But I would break his heart. And could you even be with me if I broke your Parabalthai's heart? If I could just do that? If I could be that kind of person? Could you be with me? And she never tells Will that she loves him, which she does. She loves both of these boys. But she never tells Will that she loves him, which is probably a good thing. But it's so heartbreaking. Tessa's heart is broken. She goes back to her room and burns herself with like a fire poker. Burns her hand because her heart is just so broken, and this is the only way she can like get the pain out, which highly do not recommend. Do not hurt yourself, but like her heart is just broken. Will and Jem talk, and they talk of Tessa. And Will sees how Jem really loves and adores Tessa. And any hope that he had that Jem didn't really love her or didn't love her as much was dashed. Also, Sophie reveals to Tessa that she dreams of being a shadow hunter, which she would be such a good shadow hunter. And I think she should totally drink from the Mortal Cup because she's awesome. And her and Gideon would be able to be together. Tessa still can't help but feel love towards both Jem and Will. And she knows that she accepted Jem's proposal. Jem is who she needs to be with, but like she still loves Will. And that doesn't mean she doesn't love Jem. She does, but she loves both of the boys. At the meeting, where it's been 2 weeks and she didn't do it, Benedict backs up Charlotte, says she handled everything like a pro. She handled the spy thing with coldness and malice like I would expect of any man. So weird. But she handled everything great, and I will not take the Institute. It should stay with Charlotte. Also, then, mechanical bugs are seen spying on them for Mortmain, because now Mortmain doesn't have any human spies, or Shadowhunter spies, I should say, that can tell him everything that goes on, so he resorted to mechanical bugs. At, I think, dinner that night, Tessa and Jem announce their news that they're engaged. Charlotte announces the news that she's pregnant. Henry also is finding out right now, and he's so excited. And then there's a knock on the door, and not even a knock. Someone comes in because they can, because they're a shadow hunter, and it's revealed to be Cecily. She's like, I'm a shadow hunter, and I'm going to be trained. And that, my friends, is the story of the Clockwork Prince. So, please tell me what you thought down below. Which boy are you rooting for? Are you rooting for Jem? Are you rooting for Will? What do you think about all of this? One of my best friends, she is polyamorous, and I know the love triangle trope is her least favorite trope, or one of her least favorite tropes anyway, because she's like, why don't they all just be together? And I know that's what she would be thinking, and whew, like that would be perfect, because she does love both boys so much. So what do you think? Do you think she should be with both, neither, one or the other? What did you think about Jessamyn's betrayal, Nate's death? Just let me know what you thought. And there is one more book, so if you want to talk about what happens in that book, please just let everyone know that you're talking about something that is a spoiler, so they don't get anything spoiled for them if they do not want it to be. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!